assuming Adolf Hitler never invades anybody,
the logic.
I'm
I'm trying to infer the point that you're getting at, and it seems to me like you're suggesting the United States should militarily invade every fascist country on Earth.
Democratically,
and then it immediately fell apart. We gave the ANA an ungodly amount of we can't just turn every country on Earth into the 51st through 267th states. Howdy.
Been a while since we've spoken.
Yeah, it has been a little while. How you been?
I'm being eaten alive by mosquitoes, and I'm drowned in work. How are you?
Well, neither of those things are happening to me, so I guess better than you?
I really am interested in your foreign policy takes. So I seem to be like in the minority of people who call themselves an anti-fascist, who believes in the principles of anti-fascism, who is ardently opposed to leaving Afghanistan. And it seems everybody else is fully willing, with full knowledge of what the repercussions of leaving Afghanistan will be, is all fully willing to leave Afghanistan. Like, so where do we stand on this?
Well, I guess for me, the main problem is that I've just been completely blackpilled on the possibility of our continued occupation achieving anything positive, you know? It's like when you bury the knife in somebody's back, eventually you do have to take it out. When you take it out, it's going to suck. It's just, I feel like, I mean, you can take it out now or 20 years later. While we were in Afghanistan, life was better for Afghans than it will be now under the Taliban. It just feels like
I don't understand why you would be blackpilled. If life is better and we can see it's better and they have their first democratic election in their history because of us, why would you be blackpilled about that?
Because I think that it's a house of cards with a storm brewing. I think that there are a lot of domestic problems in the US that are going to attract a lot of our political time and attention, and that our permanent occupation of Afghanistan, when I say permanent, I literally mean permanent, like we can't stay there forever, wasn't really a viable solution. It seems like we weren't building anything that could last without us, and it also seemed like our occupation in the region was really, really good marketing for the Taliban, you know? Like, we have utterly failed in our war on terror, and a lot of what we're fighting now, like, we've been doing it for so long that we're killing ISIS members who were young enough that they weren't alive during 9/11. They got radicalized because they're the relatives of the people who died from when we attacked. Like, it's like this insanely reciprocal, like, infinite process. And I feel like past a point, we have to, like, go soft power instead of hard power, because the way we're handling it right now, it just seems like we were letting a wound fester, you know?
The soft power feels like it doesn't really have any meaning unless you have hard power to back it up. You're not really addressing what I'm asking. Like, if you know the Taliban are fascist and you're just blackpilled, like, are we just okay with fascism then, and we're only anti-fascist, you know, softly? If I might, when it comes to the security of Taiwan, when it comes to security of Korea, we don't say, well, 20 years is too much for them, and we don't argue, well, this is an indefinite occupation, it needs to end.
Wait, I do. I think we spend a ton of money in the military bases that we keep in South Korea, in Japan, and Germany. I'm very much in favor of us pulling out of there as well, at least to a large extent.
These are security agreements we have with these nations for their security.
Yeah,
they want us there.
We can negotiate them.
Afghan government. Well, we negotiated with the Afghan government, and then we just backstabbed them and negotiated with the Taliban. This seems to betray the, you know, any semblance of anti-fascism.
Well, wait, hold on. I didn't negotiate with the Taliban. That was Trump.
No,
I didn't release
we as in Trump. I'm sorry, we as in America. Excuse me.
Well, I agree. Trump is not an anti-fascist. I'm willing to bite that bullet. No,
he seems to be aligned on the solutions with many supposed anti-fascists.
Yeah, because I think that many anti-fascists, along with myself, first of all, I don't necessarily know how much of a correlation there is between being anti-fascist in a sort of domestic national security sense and, like, geopolitically in a U.S. humanitarian interventionist sense. I don't know how well those overlap exactly, but I would
have to argue. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I would say that, I mean, the reason why is I think that what's happening right now in Afghanistan would have happened anyway. We can push it down the line, but we couldn't prevent it. It seemed like we couldn't prevent it.
This feels like the same logic as, like, you could, you know, murders are going to happen anyway, so why have police, right? No matter what, like, the police, you know, people are still going to murder. This isn't. So when you say you don't see an overlap between Afghanistan's when a domestic anti-fascism with a foreign policy of humanitarian intervention. I'm wondering, would you? So if you're hypothetically Vaush in 1935 U.S., would you have pursued appeasement for Hitler or any of the European fascists then, of which the anti-fascist movements were born?
Do you think that's comparable?
I do. I really do. Yes, I think the Taliban's treatment of people is comparable to that of the Nazis.
I'm not going to deny that the Taliban and the Nazis are both fascists, and that's really, really bad. The difference is that when it came to the Nazis, the solution to their expansionist behavior was invasion, which we did, and we committed to it too, Well, whereas
hypothetically they didn't invade, would that change your attitude about removing them any? Would we just appease them?
Well, I
mean, not appease them, but let them sit as the government.
I don't think that appeasement works.
What I'm saying is, if assuming Adolf Hitler never invades anybody,
the logic. I'm trying to infer the point that you're getting at, and it seems to me like you're suggesting the United States should militarily invade every fascist country on Earth.
It depends on how feasible it is, but I don't see anything wrong with regime changing fascist nations. I think that's part of being anti-fascist.
We regime change nations into fascists for the better part of the last century.
We did not regime change Afghanistan into a fascist nation. We regime changed them into a democracy. We left them to fascists.
We propped up a facsimile of a democracy made with toothpicks and gum. I don't think
the facsimile of democracy is preferable to the fascist Taliban. I'm sorry, I keep cutting you off.
Yeah, but it's possible that something more could be built. I just don't think that our occupation was working, especially because our presence there seemed to exacerbate recruiting. I mean, what's a better like recruitment strategy for future Taliban or ISIS or Al-Qaeda members than the fact that the U.S. essentially owns your country and maintains a few thousand troops strong garrisons so that they can continue to completely control your government? I mean, pretty black-pilled, right?
Well, I'm not as black-pilled as you, but even if I see that this is truly pointless endeavor, what is the solution then to being anti-fascist against the Taliban? What do you do?
I do not think this is something that we can solve with military force. The problems that they have in Afghanistan aren't like the problems that... I'm sorry, 1 second. For some reason, Vermin let a cat in here, and then the cat wants to leave. Why? Pigeon. Why, Pigeon? God, she's annoying. Okay, sorry. Hello.
That's the feline deflection.
Yeah, it's a popular strategy.
It's a debate tactic. Yep.
Okay. Look, the issue is that I don't think the situations are necessarily alike. The problem that we had with Nazi Germany was that was the government. The Nazis weren't some insurgent force brewing off in the mountainside. They were an organized government with one leader and a cult of personality sustained through the apparatus of a modern nation state. The Taliban aren't like that. You can invade a country and destroy a government, but every time we fought back against the Taliban, like a bouncy ball, they would just sort of coagulate and recede and retract and grow again. It seemed like that spark of rebellion, that underlying Islamo-fascist tendency, isn't something that we can expel from the country with military force. It doesn't, like, we've been trying and it just doesn't seem to be working. It's just going to swamp to and fro, and maybe we build a democracy that lasts a few years after we go, but there's something underlying it that I don't think we're solving with our occupation. It just seems like we're kicking the can down the road. But maybe by getting this over with, we can highlight internal antagonisms within Afghanistan and the Taliban, which can allow a more naturalistic, a more, how would you say, a more holistic rejection of the Taliban's doctrine. Or maybe they run the country so poorly that in a couple of years, popular opinion will turn against them so severely that they won't be able to recruit anymore. And then they'll just die out on their own.
We don't have a basis to say that. Popular opinion didn't turn against them at any point when they actually held the government. They held it by force.
Yeah. So what do we do?
Well, that was the question I had asked you. What is the solution? If you agree that the Taliban are anti-fascist,
I don't think we're the solution. I don't think America can solve all these problems.
Fine, what is the solution? If we're not the solution, what is the solution?
I think the solution is to wait and see how the political dynamics in that country evolve with time. I mean, if you want, we can invade them again and sort of push back the wave further and wait another 10 or 20 years. But
no, I don't I'm not totally doomed. I noticed that they completely receded in power based on our presence there, and they completely gained power based on our retreat. So I would wonder. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, of course they can't stand up to the American military. I'm not denying that, but I don't think it's that's a solution to Afghanistan. Like, just let them be like a permanent military base for the United States. Their population constantly fighting. It's not like things were peaceful with us there either. The ANA was constantly fighting and dying against Taliban.
But they were markedly more peaceful with us there. And again,
but that's not a solution.
Other than like stay and wait. Stay and wait is certainly not a solution, right? Invade is way more of a solution than stay and wait. And I'm wondering, what would your response be if the Taliban start mass killing people? What would your response be if women start being stoned regularly again?
I imagine that's probably already happening. We just don't have video of it yet. My answer would be, I don't think this is something we can fix right now. We can't fix the Uyghur Muslim genocide. We can't fix the death camps in North Korea. We can't fix what's happening in Turkmenistan.
We can't fix the Uyghur Muslim genocide because China is a nuclear power that very, very easily threatens world stability.
We can't invade every
We
can't invade every non-nuclear country.
No, you can beat up the school bully without trying to punch out Conor McGregor too, right? Afghanistan is way more manageable than any of these other examples you're pulling up.
Clearly not, because we were there for 20 years with one objective, which was find bin Laden. That happened 15 years ago, and since then we haven't even managed to purge the one major enemy fighting force in that region. Like, I don't think it's working. It's a temporary solution at best, and it's one which might be preventing a real solution. And we just can't fix every problem in the world. We can't just roll. Where in history would I point to for like a positive example of this? Like a country in a position similar to Afghanistan's, like an American military intervention for decades, like fixes its insurgency problem.
Well, I can point to like countries where American intervention's completely lacking, and it's exacerbated problems. Thinking Rwanda, where no intervention force allowed for a genocide that killed 800,000 people. Right? I don't want Afghanistan to turn into this for the better part of a century, where people are slaughtered en masse by the Taliban, which you already seem to agree is happening, and we all just sit on our hands and say, "Well, time will tell."
But we need to be able to solve these problems.
So you don't think this is a problem that can be solved militarily?
It seems not, no. Unless you want another full-scale invasion of Afghanistan, like a month after we leave.
Yeah, I think like if a terrorist organization has a lock on a country such that they're massacring people, a full-scale invasion is perfectly acceptable as an answer to oust them.
There are horrible things happening in countries all over the world. Why are we selecting this one as the focal point of our military aggression?
We should be selecting for any country where it's feasible to intervene, and we can change it for the course of the good, for the better.
And Afghanistan, haven't changed it though.
We did. We absolutely did.
We didn't. We
did. You said Afghanistan was better in human rights. Afghanistan was better democratically.
And then it immediately fell apart. We gave the ANA an ungodly amount of. Yeah, we can't just turn every country on earth into the 51st through 267th states. Afghanistan, we gave them so much money. They had a higher military force, they had better equipment, and they got fucking rolled by the Taliban. Nothing we did mattered.
They had no US or NATO backing.
We were playing puppet.
And allies they had left them.
No, it's because the underlying political structure failed them. The soldiers were good, but we put no meaningful effort, or if we did, we failed, in a non-corrupt government. The nanosecond it wasn't being used to supplement American military force, their warlords, who we pretended were real politicians and leaders, just fled or completely broke down troop communication.
Is there no good man in Afghanistan we simply couldn't correct this problem for politically? Afghanistan will not be built as a republic in a day, right? And it certainly won't be built as one in 20 years. It takes a lot of time to change like the structure of what is essentially a terrorist state into a feasible democracy. It takes a lot of work.
Can you sympathize with my belief that what we were doing there was a waste of time when with 20 years and trillions spent, they still instantly got rolled by the Taliban?
I sympathize with it, but I also feel like it betrays some other part of me, endemic to me, that says we have to stand up against injustice in the world.
But you have to do it in a way that works. But this American gung ho, this attitude,
in a way that works.
This attitude leads to further misery and suffering. This insistence on American military intervention as the only mechanism by which we can undo wrongs in the world.
American. It doesn't have to be American. It can be military intervention from any other power. And I don't even care if it's China or Russia or whoever with the shittiest human rights records. So long as human rights are preserved, so long as people are not massacred.
I'm more in favor of UN intervention than I am with United States intervention.
UN Army is made up of member nations. The United States Army is part of the UN Army.
Yes, but there is a difference between the UN occupying a territory and the US occupying a territory.
It was a NATO occupation.
NATO is not the UN. Those are two very different things.
What UN nations didn't join the occupation that you think should have joined the occupation?
It's not who joins, it's the symbolic meaning of the organization. NATO is an Soviet Cold War military org. The UN is supposed to be representative of the world governments. There's a pretty big difference between people running in there flying NATO and UN flags, you know?
Okay. Can I ask one more question from my homie Sock Done Left?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, motherfucker just deleted his goddamn messages.
Uh-oh.
Okay, well, I'll just recite what is his message from memory. Sock Done Left wants to know that hypothetically, if Hitler, if the Nazis had carried on as a guerrilla force instead of, ceding government in Germany, would you have advocated for leaving Germany to the Nazis again as a guerrilla force?
If we occupied Germany after World War II ended for 20 years, never being able to elevate the Republic beyond a sham of a democracy, and never being able to meaningfully get rid of the Nazi insurgents in the hills of northern Germany, then yeah, eventually I would say that military occupation would probably have to, be ceded. Because you know what the Nazis are going to be telling themselves? They're going to be recruiting people based on the perceived misery that U.S. occupation is causing in Germany. Or they would call it Jewish occupation. They would say, of course, oh, why do the Americans occupy our fatherland? It's because the Juden, etc., etc. And then they would recruit off alt-right forums online, and they would go live in the hills of Germany near Switzerland, and they would take pot shots at U.S. soldiers and shit. I don't know. It's it's about efficacy to me. I just don't think this avenue works. Maybe economic investment or incentivization can work. Honest to God, I would prefer the Chinese Belt and Road Initiative, slowly inoculizing the Taliban to what we were doing,
It's just really I'm not entirely sure paying Nazis to not do Nazi things is the feasible answer. They're essentially a mob boss if we see this.
Yeah, but
right? It doesn't have to be Nazi. I mean, just fascists in general. Same with the Taliban. Paying them to not.
We did that with Nazis, though. We hired a ton of them after World War II. Also, we do that all the time with unjust structures. Police used to be basically like mob gangs that were run by mayors in U.S. towns, We buy out bad institutions and
they weren't abolished. They were reformed, which is why I don't think you have to abolish military intervention as an answer to fascism. You just reform it, make it better.
Well, but in this case, I don't think what we're doing works. But if the Chinese come into Afghanistan and Belt and Road Initiative the place, and the Chinese are like, hey, this whole genocide thing is bad optics, can you maybe stop it and just be kind of generally sexist? Maybe the Taliban can be reformed. All I know is that what we were doing wasn't working. If China can turn them into some sort of despotic third world,
which we're highly doubtful of, right?
Well, eventually something's going to happen with the Taliban. States like that are unstable. The situation right now is not going to last long. I give you at most 2 years before there's fractional infighting in the existing Taliban, or there's another resurgence or resistance, or somebody plants a bomb in the office of one of the Taliban leaders, which leads to infighting. These are not super well-regimented, well-organized, highly disciplined military officers. They're a bunch of fucking angry alt-righters, but in Afghanistan. Eventually, the situation will change, and what we were doing wasn't working, so maybe the material conditions will allow things to progress to a more favorable...
The material conditions cannot improve without the finished construction of the Ring Road, and that cannot improve without a secure secure Afghanistan, and that cannot be secured until the Taliban are out.
Well, we tried for 20 years and it didn't work. So, look, I mean, if you think you're Bill Dipperly and you can run the military and fix...
No, I'm no expert. But in much the same way, the answer to the Tuskegee experiment isn't to stop giving black people medicine, right? The answer to a bad occupation of Afghanistan isn't to just leave it to the Taliban. It's to just do it better.
I don't think those are comparable.
Well,
All right, we gotta cut it, LSP.
All right,
here.
I'm sorry. Okay,
Yeah, you're fine.
I appreciate your time, Mr. Vaush. You have fun with your stuff.
It's okay. I love you. I hope that things get better in Afghanistan.
I do too. I really do. Peace, love, and rock and roll.